I believe we have another caller on the line, David. David, if you would, please proceed with your question.
This is a little bit complicated, but if I were to establish a trust and name myself and my grandchildren, some of whom are minors, as beneficiaries, and subsequent to that someone sued me for an accident and they were awarded a judgment greater than my insurance would cover, could they recover money from the trust?
Very good question, David, and something that comes up pretty regularly and something that you definitely want to make sure you're taking care of in planning the trust. Chad, what are your options there in addition to potentially increasing your insurance coverage so that you have protection there? But just on the trust side, what kind of protections can you do to make sure that you're adequately taking care of this kind of scenario?
You know, David, that's a question I get pretty frequently. People think that if they just put their assets in a trust, their assets are protected from their creditors. Unfortunately, we know that's not the case. As Ted well knows, if you can touch your assets in a trust, that means a judgment creditor can touch your assets. The good thing is your beneficiaries, maybe your grandchildren, if they were to have creditors to try to come after their future interest from that trust, their interest is protected, but your judgment creditors, they are not precluded from reaching the assets of your trust. That's for a typical revocable trust. If you wanted to create an irrevocable trust, that, however, is a situation in which you could actually have creditor protection and therefore, prevent that situation that you'd be concerned about.
Right, and that's kind of the quid pro quo with the irrevocable trust. You lose some of the control of it, but you actually get some better protection from this type of situation that David has just referenced. And then another thing, David, just to consider is, you mentioned having enough insurance. One option that people often look at, and that Chad I know discusses with clients when they're looking at asset protection, is buying what's called an umbrella policy that will go over the top of your normal coverage. And it's as you can imagine, insurance is based off of risk, and that's the way the premiums are assessed. And so as you go up higher and higher, the risk of a claim of that magnitude is lower and lower, so that as a result of that, umbrella insurance is much more affordable, but it does require you have certain mandatory limits on your underlying policies, typically anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000 in coverage on automobile and different on different types of liabilities. So just something you need to explore and look at, in addition to making sure you look at your options on irrevocable versus revocable trust. But those are all very good. That's a very good question. I'm glad you're looking at that and trying to plan for your future generations, your grandkids and things of that nature. Chad, I know that this is one topic. They just mentioned the trusts, and I know I have people ask me all the time. I want to do a trust for this or trust for that. And I know it may be a general rule, but is trust always your go-to option when you're looking to help someone set up how to pass their wealth down to another generation, or are there other options at your disposal?
So there are definitely a lot more options that are available to folks, and in my opinion, a trust is appropriate in certain circumstances, primarily if you have maybe children who you don't, maybe what we call spendthrift, right? You don't want to give them a large lump sum of money at 18, or you have concerns that it's a large sum of money and we want to spread that out over a course of years. So that's a situation a trust would be appropriate. But if you don't have minor beneficiaries and your beneficiaries, let's say they are frugal and they can manage their money, there are things that we can do, such as pay on death beneficiaries that we talked about earlier. We would have a last will and testament. And then in Florida, we actually have this really unique vehicle to protect our real property from probate, and that's called a ladybird deed. So we basically just create a deed for you that would pass to your beneficiaries automatically upon your death. So we can achieve everything a trust necessarily would create for you without maybe the complexity of creating a trust. So there are definitely alternatives out there.